The Great Library of Alexandria. Just say the name, and what do you picture? Probably this legendary, almost mythical place, a storehouse of all ancient wisdom. But what if the story we all think we know about its epic, fiery destruction is just plain wrong? Let's dig in.
You know the story, right? We've all seen some version of it. This quote, which was inspired by the great Carl Sagan, really captures that popular image. A single, terrible event where ignorance and fire tragically snuffed out the light of knowledge. It's a powerful, dramatic story. But is it what actually happened? Because what if the real culprit wasn't some mob with torches, but a bureaucrat with a pen? That's the question we're really going to explore here. We're going to peel back all those layers of myth to find a much quieter, and maybe, just maybe, a more unsettling reality. Okay, so let's tackle the legend head-on. Did the ancient world's greatest center of learning really go up in one spectacular Hollywood-style blaze? First off, we've got to understand what the library actually was. Because it wasn't just a big building with a bunch of scrolls. It was part of this larger thing called the Mouseion, a state-funded research institute. I mean, think of it like an ancient mashup of a national library, a top-tier university, and a government think tank, all rolled into one. They had over 100 scholars living there full-time, all on the government's dime. Their mission? To collect the writings of all men. Ambitious, right? Now, when a treasure that huge and that important vanishes, everybody wants to point a finger. So let's go ahead and line up the usual suspects who are always accused of its destruction. All right, we've got 4 main contenders, and they're spread out over almost 700 years. First up, Julius Caesar, during his whole drama with Cleopatra. Then, fast forward a few centuries, and you've got Emperor Aurelian's battles. After that, we have Christian mobs who are supposedly enforcing a decree against pagan temples. And finally, way down the line, the Arab conquest of Egypt. Each one of these has been blamed for the crime at some point. So let's take them one by one. The most famous story, the one everybody knows, blames Julius Caesar. And look, yeah, there was a fire. But the ancient sources suggest it was an accident. It spread from ships his men torched in the harbor. And what did it burn? Most likely, it was warehouses down by the docks, filled with scrolls that were ready for export. So, a huge loss of knowledge? For sure. But was it the fatal, library-destroying knockout blow? Not even close. Okay, suspect number 2, the Christian mobs in 391 AD. This is another really popular one, and again, there's a little bit of truth to it. There were religious riots, and they did damage a library, but it was the daughter library, a smaller collection located in a temple called the Serapeum. The crucial point here, and we're going to come back to this, is that by this time, the main great institution was already kind of a ghost. And finally, we get to the most cinematic story of all. The one where the Arab army used all the priceless scrolls as fuel to heat the city's bathhouses for 6 months. It's an incredible image. But here's the thing, it's a total fabrication. This story doesn't even show up until hundreds of years after the conquest. Contemporary accounts, from both sides, Greek and Arab writers, they mention absolutely nothing about it. If something that epic had happened, you can bet someone would have written it down. So, if it wasn't one single dramatic event that destroyed the library, what was it? Well, the evidence points to something way less dramatic, but honestly, way more insidious. A slow, creeping death by 1,000 cuts. And here's the smoking gun, really. When you look at the dates, it becomes pretty clear. You have Roman writers centuries before those last supposed destructions who were already talking about the Great Library as if it were a thing of the past. They were using the past tense. It had already become a memory, a legend of a bygone era. That tells you the real decline started much, much earlier. So how does the world's greatest library just fade away? Well, it wasn't one single act. It was this long, agonizing process of official neglect. It starts when a Roman emperor suspends the scholars' paychecks. Then, foreign academics are expelled from the city. Later, rulers decide, you know what, I'd rather spend that money on the army, or maybe a new palace for myself. Staff gets cut. And without the right people to watch over the collection, scrolls are borrowed by powerful people and, surprise, surprise, they're never returned. It's basically death by apathy. The historian Heather Phillips just nails it with this quote. The real story isn't about a great fire. It's about shifting priorities and all the boring, mundane, bureaucratic decisions that slowly starve an institution until it just withers away and dies. But okay, why does any of this really matter? Because when the library was fading, the world wasn't just losing a bunch of books. It was losing something so much bigger. To get that, we have to see the library for what it truly was, an archive of power. This idea of an imperial archive is absolutely key. See, the whole point of the library wasn't just to passively store information. It was an active project. It was meant to produce, organize, and, when you get right down to it, control knowledge, to shape how people saw the world and, more importantly, their place in it. And this slide really reveals the library's true political game. By collecting all these texts, by editing them, by translating them, the rulers were basically creating a new unified Greek identity. Being a master of this curated body of knowledge, what the Greeks called paideia, or culture, that became the ultimate status symbol. It was a way to legitimize their rule, not with soldiers, but with ideas. And this is where it all comes around and brings us right back to today. Because this story of a slow decline, driven by apathy and shifting priorities, that's not just ancient history, it's a huge lesson for our time. We see the exact same logic at play right now, it's just dressed up in modern arguments. You hear it all the time. The slow defunding of libraries, museums, research in the humanities, the argument that physical archives are obsolete now that we have the internet. It's the same gradual, petty chipping away at the very institutions that preserve our collective memory, all done in the name of other priorities. When you boil it all down, the greatest threat to knowledge isn't the sudden shock of violence. It's the slow, creeping fog of indifference. It's what happens when we, as a society, just decide that our cultural heritage isn't a priority worth funding and protecting anymore. So the story of Alexandria leaves us with a really provocative and deeply relevant question. We might not have one single great library today, but we have thousands of smaller ones in our universities, our towns, our digital archives. Which ones are we allowing to fade away through our own neglect? What monuments of knowledge are we letting crumble, one budget cut at a time?